What's up, everybody? If you saw my last video, you probably know my home lab goals for the upcoming year. There have been a few questions on why I'm choosing one technology over another, or suggestions that I should be using this technology over that technology. To me, I believe there's no right answer as long as you're using it for its intended purpose. As a beginner home lab user, I have found that just getting started is the best way to go about it. So today I'll be talking about why I used the first virtualization technology I was introduced to, and why I believe as a beginner home labber you should try it too. So here are 4 reasons why I use Proxmox in my home lab. Number 1, it's free. Proxmox VE is an open source and free to use for anybody, which makes it a great choice for those looking to gain some experience using virtual machines or containers, allowing you to learn without spending any money at all. Number 2, it's full of features to include a web-based GUI or graphical user interface. The web-based GUI is my favorite part of Proxmox. It's easy to use, it looks nice, and it just allows me to enjoy the experience of learning everything within Proxmox. I can go around and tinker with things either using the GUI or the command line, so it allows you to practice getting things running in a variety of different ways. Okay, the next thing is going to be the GUI. So many of you have already seen this login page. So I'm going to type in root and my password. And if you notice that I didn't get a nag box, I have a video also that I'll link in that will go over getting rid of the nag box. And then also it will help you with the no subscription repository. So when you do any type of updates within the command line or within the updates tab here, you won't get any errors because you are running an enterprise repository with no subscription. So they'll help get rid of that. So number 2 for me is the GUI. Very easy to use, nice to look at. If we go to our nodes, so you have your nodes here on the left with the summary of what your host machine is. So this one has 4 CPUs, 12 gigs of RAM, 113 gigs hard drive space. So it just gives you a quick overview on what your host machine is. You can write notes here if you want. Here's the command line for the host machine node. Go to system. You guys can click through all these and get familiar with what all these things do. If you click this drop down here, these are all my virtual machines and containers. Containers are these boxes here, and then the virtual machines are these screen looking things. Most of these aren't running. This is just a server I have for fun to tinker with things, but I do have pfSense and Pi-hole running on this particular one. Here's the local storage for the host machine. You guys can also click through these. This is where you'll store your container volumes and then your ISO images for the different software or operating systems that you download. Also, the container templates are stored here also. Number 3, you can install it on nearly anything. Obviously, your hardware that you run it on will limit the amount of resources you can allocate to virtualization, but at least you can start off with nearly any old piece of hardware. And I've never had any issues installing Proxmox using the recommended hardware list. If we go to documentation current here, scroll down to installing Proxmox VE, you can see the minimum requirements and then recommended system requirements. So this is an easy way to install Proxmox with nearly any device as long as you're meeting these minimum requirements. And I have a video on the Proxmox installations. It's my very first video. I will link that below so you guys can watch that if you have any trouble with the installation process. From here also, if we go back to documentation and go down to installation over here, the same thing I go over in my video is the same steps that are in the documentation. So it goes over what every screen is during the installation process. So this is from using the Proxmox VE installer, and it goes through every single screen you'll see with what everything means. If you want to read more into it, that's a good thing to look at, just so you have a little bit more familiarization with the installation process. Number 4, documentations and resources available. So for most casual home lab users, a subscription for support is not needed. So to have a software that is rich in resources is super important. I use the official documentation for nearly anything new that I do within Proxmox, and if I can't find it, I just type my question into Google, and most of the time the question has already been answered on the Proxmox forum. I have found the best way to learn the technology that you are using is to go to the official webpage or GitHub and read documentation. I know reading documentation is not the funnest thing to do, but you can learn so much and you know the information will be correct. Every time I watch YouTube tutorials, I like to pair the tutorial with the official documentation because sometimes users can miss steps or they implement some steps of their own. Okay, and documentations and resources. So if we're at the virtualization screen, if you go to features, and then you'll see here on the right hand side, read more, documentation. You can either go through this wiki type page for Proxmox, or if you go to documentation current, you'll get a little bit more in-depth documentation. Here's all the features that are available for you. You can dive deeper into, say, the Proxmox VE firewall if you want to, cluster manager, VE storage, QEMU, KVM virtual machine, so we'll get that one open. Here you can read about pretty much anything to do with the virtual machines within Proxmox. So maybe you didn't know what QEMU stands for. Here it tells you, short form for quick emulator, and it goes over what Proxmox is, goes through all the virtual machine settings. So if we scroll down here, when you first create a virtual machine, you'll go through all these steps. So let's do that now, just so you guys can see. So if we go to create VM, it'll go over picking a node, VM ID, what you name it, the operating system, what all these things mean, what system disk, CPU, memory. You can find that within here. Look at what all those things mean. So whenever you're on this page, what does operating system settings do? What do the system settings do? This is a good way to advance your knowledge on the hypervisor. Or we can also look at some command line stuff. So on the left side here, you can go all the way down to this is all about your virtual machines and containers. So take a look at these. You can learn a lot from just looking at this documentation here. So command line usage examples. So I don't know if you knew, you can start your VMs in the command line, shut them down with a wait period, move a disk image to different storage. So there's a lot of different things that you can do within the command line. I'll get you used to using it. PCIe pass-throughs. So your general requirements, hardware, IO, MMU, what all these things mean. Really learn a lot about the hypervisor within the documentations. And there's so much out there. As you can see, the documentation list is decently long, and that's not really even diving deep into more specific things. I have to say, there's something about Proxmox that doesn't make me want to replace my Proxmox server anytime soon. It's just so easy to use, it looks pleasing to the eye, and there's so much information out there that you can find a solution to almost any problem you run into. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you like or dislike about Proxmox, because maybe you guys noticed something that I don't. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.